everybody, my name is Ashley Henry. I am an acrylic painter and artist. I have always loved painting and drawing and doing anything that's creative. And today I decided to hop on and to share a little bit about my art journey and to begin a series where I talk about my paintings and answer some of the questions that you might have. My favorite medium to work with is acrylic paint because of how quickly that you can work with the medium, and also because I just find that there's such a brightness to the colors, at least in my paintings, there's such a brightness to the colors, and I love to be able to move with the material. The time periods that I'm most inspired by, or the time period that I'm most inspired by, is the Impressionist time period. So think of Cézanne, he's like my favorite, and then Monet. My teachers in college used to always share that they would paint with these pulsating colors, how you could see reds and blues and purples, and they kind of seemed to ebb and flow in the painting, and I absolutely love that, and so I adapted that into my own style. I was also particularly drawn to, it's called chiaroscuro, and it's where there's a stark contrast between bright lights and deep shadows, and it creates like just a striking composition when you use it. And so I was inspired by that. As you can see, I have very dark background, and things or elements are emerging from the background, like this piece of bread, or even the robe, it seems to be emerging from the darkness, but the light source is always coming from Jesus, or I always try to have it coming from Jesus, because in him is light and there is no darkness at all. So the light comes from inside the robe, the light shines from his hands, and I just think it just speaks volumes to who he says that he is. So I have been painting for 8 years professionally, I would say. I graduated from college in 2015, and when I was in school, I went through a studio art major. I was well versed in many different areas of art that included ceramics, printmaking, 2D, 3D art, videography, graphic design. So I've been able to dabble in a lot of different areas. I really landed on painting my junior and senior year when we were asked to pick a focus. I wanted my focus to be on painting because I loved how bright and vivid you can get colors. You know, acrylic paint will dry quickly as you paint, so you can continue to build layers and layers without waiting, like with oil painting, for it to dry before you can continue to work with it more. In 2015, I had my God encounter where I gave my life to the Lord. It's one thing to grow up in a household where your parents are sharing the gospel, or you go to a church, but you don't actually make it your own. In 2015, a lot of events happened that was kind of like a wake-up call to me, and I decided to re-give my life to the Lord and to begin to seek him and to serve him. And in doing that, I recognized that the creative gifts that he gave me, that it ultimately was from him, and I wanted to honor the Lord with the gifts that he had given me. So I prayed a prayer, and I told the Lord that I would give my art to him. And I believe that he really took that and began to show me some pretty awesome things, and began to trust me with the paintings that he wanted me to create. One day when I was in my room, I was a recent graduate, and I was bored out of my mind staring up at the ceiling, and this image flashed into my mind. And the best way that I can describe it is it's almost like you're using your imagination, but you know it's not your imagination, it's something that's coming from the Lord. You know, if I said to you right now, imagine an apple or imagine an orange, you can vaguely visualize what that looks like in your mind without it actually being right in front of you. And that's how I saw this picture. So I got up, started scrambling. I found the only canvas that I could find, and I grabbed my paints and my brushes, and in the midst of setting up, one of my friends calls me, and she said, "Ashley, we're having a phone call Bible study group. Do you want to join?" And I told her yes, but I have to paint because I just got this painting. And so I'll have you guys on speakerphone and mute. And so she agrees that was fine. I'm painting during the whole time that the preacher is preaching, and at the end he begins to give prophetic words. And again, prophetic words is just when you're hearing what the Lord is saying and you're speaking it out over somebody, or declaring something over somebody, or speaking about like a future event, or revealing like something that happened in the past. It's just, you know, scripture says that believers, that we are his sheep, and that his sheep hear his voice and we follow him. So they're just the sheep that are hearing his voice at the moment. And anyways, the preacher heard the voice of God, and he said, Ashley, the Lord's going to start giving you images to paint, and it's going to go all over the US. And I just started crying because he didn't know that I was painting at the time. And I really held on to that because, you know, as an artist, you want to have impact. You want to have, you know, not that I necessarily wanted to be famous per se, but I wanted the art to be famous, and I wanted Jesus to be made famous through the art, and to have the art in people's homes. It's a dream of artists, honestly. When he said that, it, you know, stirs something in me to continue to paint and to just be a good steward of what God was beginning to show me, to create more works and to share them and let God speak to people through the paintings. So this was the painting that the Lord gave to me that day. It was a depiction of Jesus squeezing grapes, where the juice, which is symbolic of his blood, was being poured into the cup, and behind the cup is bread, there's crackers, there's more grapes, all representative of when the disciples took communion before Jesus went on the cross. God was telling us to take communion in remembrance of him, to remember what he had done, and also to remember the new covenant that we get to walk into, that we are now no longer, you know, slaves to sin, but we are slaves to righteousness, that we get to enjoy the fruit of the kingdom of light and no longer the kingdom of darkness. So there's so much to that. But yeah, this is just the beginning, and I was so excited about this painting and being able to create it and share it with you guys. So I asked you guys to send me some of your questions, and I'm going to answer one of them today. How did you know that this was your calling? You know, years ago in 2015, when I first got the first vision from the Lord, I wouldn't say that that I knew that this was my calling. It was more so God was showing me the next step, and I was just yielding and being obedient to it. And now, 8 years later, I look back at the collection of the work that's there, and I see the way that the gospel can be shared online through the art, and I'm continuing to walk and progress in that, and it has become something that God has been calling me into, and now people can look at it and say, you've been called into this, which is wild to say. Your obedience can take you far. When you have faith in the Lord and you trust in his guiding and his leading and directing, you begin to walk in the calling that he has for you when you partner your faith along with his purpose that he has. So yes, I'm so excited to share more of my paintings with you, to share more about my take on the meaning behind them, and to answer your questions. So please feel free to leave your questions below. I'm going to be doing more painting reveals, and also just trying to answer some of your questions about prophetic art, about being an artist, some of the tools that I use, some tips that I can share, so that you guys can be encouraged and inspired to keep creating every single day. I'll see you guys in the next video.